Welcome into the Football Guys Fantasy Football Show. I'm Alfredo Brown, joined as always. I've got Dave Kluge here today. We're going to give you guys the best picks to make in each round of your fantasy drafts because it's easy for us to tell you, like, hey, these are our Football guys, or these are sleepers, or these are breakouts, and sure, that's fun, but what's the actual roadmap that gets you to your fantasy football team? So we're going to take a look at Drafters ADP. This is something you can find over on the Football Guys website. When you look at our average draft position tool, Drafters does have a partnership with Football Guys where they have some of the sharpest drafts going on, some of the sharpest drafters in there. We're going to take a look at the average draft position there so that we can figure out sort of the best roadmap for you guys as you make your picks in your fantasy football draft. And Dave, we're going to go quickly through this because we've got 17 rounds here. Each of us have a pick.
And real quickly, before we jump in, I just want to say, if you're not on Drafters already, they're doing a promo right now where if you use promo code Football Guys, you get a 100% deposit match up to $100. And then if you draft 10 teams, you get a free ticket. So essentially, you can put $100 into your account today, and you'll get 11 free entries into this competition with $2.5 million up top. And right now, you might not be familiar with the term overlay, but what that means is that not everybody is going to sign up. They're not going to fill this contest 100% of the way. We're less than a week away from this contest locking. It's only 61% full right now. So you can get in there, throw some entries in there. They are guaranteeing the payouts, $2.5 million. They're paying out regardless of whether this contest fills or not. And the fewer people that sign up, the more likely you are to win. So drafters.com/refer/football guys will have the link in the description, but be sure to sign up and try to get some drafts in before the season kicks off because it's a great chance to win some money.
Dave entering his content creator era. I love it. Link in bio. Use the code Kluge for 10% off.
I practice what I preach. Like I've already got 32 of these
we know you're
tickets in, and I'm trying to get as many more as I can in before the season locks. Yeah.
And before we start this, just want to remind everybody, you got a bunch of ways you can enjoy this show. First, it's right here on YouTube. So if you're watching right now, take a moment to like this video, comment down below with your thoughts, players you're targeting in the drafts, or maybe just the guys you agree or disagree with in each round of the draft that we're going to talk about here. Also, we've got the Football Guys Listener League. You can join and be a part of that where you can take on Dave and I, try to beat us in a 12-man fantasy football league. It's really easy to enter to be in the league. All you have to do is leave a review on the podcast side, wherever you get your podcast. You're going to screenshot that, send it over to fantasyshow@footballguys.com. Once again, send it over to fantasyshow@footballguys.com, and that'll give you an entry to be in the Listener League. All right, Dave, let's do this. We're going to go quickly through these. Round one. This is a tough one because you can kind of just pick anyone, best player that falls to you at your pick, but you and I have been beating the drum for this guy all offseason. Our favorite pick in round one is CeeDee Lamb because you can pretty much take him on any pick 2 through 6, sometimes even 7. There's just, at least in my eyes, there's just going to be a consistency that you have. You just don't want to miss on your first round pick. The Dallas Cowboys, in my opinion, are going to be throwing more than ever because of the shape of the way that their team is built this year. Adding George Pickens to me is not a negative for the Cowboys. It is a positive. It ensures this team's going to be passing more than we've ever seen.
Yeah, I'm there as well. And I mean, I think Christian McCaffrey also, like now that he's healthy, like you could make a consideration for him to be the 101, and he's falling all the way to 7 or 8 in drafts right now. I think that's another great pick that you can make. But yeah, I think CeeDee Lamb, you know, I'm taking him second off the board, and he's regularly falling to like 3rd, 4th, 5th in drafts. So I think he makes for like value-wise the best pick you can get.
All right, let's go to round 2 here. That was you and I agreed in round 1. In round 2, and from here on out, we're going to have different players. So that way we can give you guys some options here. Round 2, Dave, who are you going with?
Chase Brown, I think, is the one that's the biggest value to me, and he has started to creep up a lot. I mean, this guy was going in round 3 a couple of weeks ago. Now he's moving up. Sometimes I see him even going at the end of the first round. I just saw a YouTube commenter said that happened in his home league when we were just talking about Chase Brown. So I think that he's a great value, but there's a lot of guys that I like in round 2. I also like Jonathan Taylor if you're picking from the back end of round 2. If you've got an early, top 3 pick and then coming around in the back of round 2, if Jonathan Taylor is sitting there, that's just such an easy click over the other names available. So yeah, I think there's still plenty of good value in round 2, but Chase Brown, Jonathan Taylor, and the guy that you're going to talk about are the 3 guys that I'm drafting most aggressively.
Yeah, my guy here in round 2 is Drake London. He's someone I've talked about as being willing to take in round 1, which you should. He's my wide receiver 5 in rankings. I labeled him as one of my football guys. That was in our previous episode. If you haven't checked that out, go ahead and watch that or listen to that after this. Drake London is a guy that I am leaning into heavily this year. I think the Falcons will as well. They just lost their right tackle, Kaleb McGary, as well. So they are going to be looking to get the ball out of Michael Penix's hand quick. And Drake London is the guy that they've been doing that with, where they get him off the line of scrimmage, give him some easy targets, let him run after the catch. This is going to be a passing offense. That defense still isn't quite there. We just know Drake London, he's near that crazy target rate that he's been getting from last year. So Drake London's the guy I want to take there in round 2. Dave,
I'll just go ahead and say it. Like, we said it the other day. I'm taking Drake London in round 1. Like, I know his ADP is in round 2, but when I'm in drafts and it's between like Brian Thomas Jr., Puka Nacua, and Drake London, I'm taking Drake London over those other receivers. Yeah,
I'm taking him ahead of Nico. I'm taking him ahead of all those guys you listed. Yeah, he's my wide receiver 5. And something that I noticed here, you and I, in the first 3 rounds, it feels like we are both aiming. I'm not going to say like we're shooting for this every single time, but we're leaning more towards going 2 wide receivers out of our first 3 picks here. Because then we get into the 3rd round. Dave, you've got another wide receiver coming off the board.
Yeah, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, and I just talked about him as my guy on our show a couple of days ago when we were talking about our football guys. I'm not going to rehash every single talking point that I said. Check out that video or that episode if you haven't already, but I just see a guy here with such a high ceiling, playing the X receiver role, getting moved all over the formation in a Clint Kubiak offense, a very good prospect, and it sounds like the path is paved for him to be that number 1 target after, dealing with a wrist injury his rookie season, after being behind DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. They're out of the picture. He's healthy, and they have an offense built around getting him the ball.
My guy on here, Josh Jacobs in round 3. And this is mostly because looking at round 3, Dave, there wasn't a whole lot that I really liked here. I really wanted Jaxon Smith-Njigba. I gave you first crack at that because he was one of your football guys. But when it comes to who's going to be safest, especially early in drafts like this, Josh Jacobs, essentially, when he's playing, and he doesn't really have a bad injury history here, he's a lock for 300 plus carries, 1,300 plus yards, double-digit touchdowns. This is a guy who's going to be a top 8 running back for you, and you're getting that. Essentially, running back 1 production here in the 3rd round. I love getting that ability here. I would have him in the same area as Jonathan Taylor in my rankings. I have him directly behind Jonathan Taylor in my rankings, and Taylor's going in the 2nd round. So for me to get this in the 3rd round, I love that. I think it's a great way to build my team. Dave, let's go to round 4 here, where you've got, look at that, another wide receiver.
Yeah, this has been a big riser for me throughout preseason. Davante Adams is a guy that I was just kind of like lukewarm on earlier in the preseason. Just, hey, he's a good player, but Puka Nacua is there. And ADP right now has it that Puka Nacua is going first and then Davante Adams is going rounds later. But if you pay close attention to the training camp reports coming out of the Rams camp, it sounds like Davante Adams is the clear wide receiver 1 here. He's been getting the majority of first reads. They're drawing up plays to get him ball in space. And Puka Nacua does what he does, playing out of the slot, getting those little plays that allow him to create after the catch. He likes to run through a defender's face, as he likes to say. But when you look at the guy that you can move outside, the guy who can beat a primary cornerback with press coverage, that's Davante Adams. And I know he's getting up there in age a little bit, but he is playing just as sharp as ever. We saw last year that he is still pulling targets at an elite rate, 3rd highest of anybody in the league. And then you pair him up with Matthew Stafford, the kingmaker, as he has been dubbed, a guy who just feeds his wide receiver 1 volume. I think that Puka Nacua can still be fine and live up to his ADP, but this is one of those situations where I think we should be a little bit lower on Puka Nacua and a little bit higher on Davante Adams, but those ADPs got entrenched before training camp kicked off, and they haven't really tightened up as much as I think they should have.
The guy I'm going to go with here in round 4, Tetairoa McMillan. I think that we are getting a nice discount on a player that the top 8 NFL draft pick, we know the history of those type of players end up doing really well when they get on the field. The trade of Adam Thielen going to the Minnesota Vikings, I wouldn't say it's a huge boost for Tet McMillan, but I would say that it's going to offer maybe another 1 or 2 targets in the games, right? Like, I think Jalen Coker is probably the biggest beneficiary of that, but it shows the confidence that the Panthers have that Tetairoa McMillan is going to be the guy for their wide receiver room. And that's big when you can trade away a veteran like that. I think we're getting this discount, Dave, because of what happened with Marvin Harrison Jr. last year. Like, I keep going back to that. Marvin Harrison Jr. was a 2nd round draft pick last year, and I know he was this can't miss prospect, and he was on the Cardinals. You know what? There's a lot of similarities here with Tetairoa McMillan, a guy who's a little bit bigger, needs to win contested catches, should be a target hog, a quarterback that needs to prove something, but I'm getting him 2 rounds later than where I was getting Harrison Jr. last year. So to me, this is an adequately and properly priced wide receiver with top 12 upside still. And I want to take that here in round 4, where I can get a guy as my wide receiver 3 who's got top 12 target potential. Yeah, give me that all day.
Yeah, I think that's a good one there. And I think this is one too where I don't want to make like the Justin Jefferson comp, because Justin Jefferson is like a 1 of 1, but you got to remember his rookie season, he got off to a pretty slow start. A lot of times we do see this with these bigger receivers, like it takes them a few weeks to acclimate. So this is something I feel like we talked about it a ton last offseason, and we haven't preached it quite as much this year, but like you have to be patient with these rookies. Don't be the person, if Tetairoa McMillan gets off to a slow start through the first couple of weeks, that you just drop him. Like, this is a guy who is playing in the NFL for the first time ever, and it might take him a few weeks to kind of get comfortable and acclimated to the next level. So he's one of those guys that even if like the season long, he's the wide receiver 20 or something like that, we're really drafting him more than anything else for what he'll do over the second half of the season if he can come on really strong in the fantasy playoffs here. So I think that is a great pick right there. And I just want to once again stress the importance, like, don't be the guy who drafts a wide receiver drafted in the first round and then drops him after a couple of weeks. Just ride through the highs and lows if they happen early on.
And if we're going to talk about just really quickly, the highs and lows, the schedule for Tetairoa McMillan is kind of great. Starting out Jacksonville, Arizona, Atlanta, New England, probably not so much, but then Miami, who just doesn't have a single defensive back that can cover there. So I think he's going to be one of these guys that gets tossed into the fire. There is no Trey McBride on that team. By the way, another guy I think both you and I would have considered here in round 4, Trevion Henderson. Just wanted to throw that out there as like an honorable mention for that. Let's go to round 5 now. Dave, I love the pick that you made here. I would have made it myself.
Yeah, this is my favorite round. Like, and this, like, if again, I've been drafting all off season. A month ago, like, all of my favorite picks in this round were kind of staggered through like rounds 5, 6, 7, 8. I used to be able to get like 4 guys that are going in this round now, all on my team, but now they're all moving up the draft board. So I'm gonna go with Jameson Williams, one of my guys that I just talked about on our show a few days ago. The ceiling is so high that if we could just see a slight little uptick in usage and he's able to maintain that efficiency, we're looking at a guy who could easily be a top 5 fantasy wide receiver. He was the wide receiver 19 last year. He's getting drafted right now as the wide receiver 25, wide receiver 26 actually here on Drafters. So we're drafting him below what we already saw him do last year. They've talked so much about him expanding his route tree, being a focal point of the offense. And it's just kind of crazy to me that we're looking at a young ascending player on a good offense getting drafted below last year's production.
Yeah, round 5 is interesting because this is where we see a lot of these guys that have been the late risers throughout the offseason start to get steamed up in here. So you're going to see the Emeka Egbuka, and then the guy that I want to talk about here, which is Ricky Pearsall. Ricky Pearsall is a football guy that I have right now. I mean, adding him as my wide receiver 4 on this team, I think he's an instant starter for your fantasy team. He's got the same high upside that a Tetairoa McMillan has as being the wide receiver 1 for the San Francisco 49ers. I want guys with upside. Like, once I get outside of those top 3 picks there, which, I mean, you're obviously going to have upside with those players because they're going that early. Once I get out of there, I want to look at players and ask, can this guy finish top 12 at his position? And if they can, I want to take the shot on them. And for me, it's Ricky Pearsall right here with the San Francisco 49ers in round 5. I love the volume you can get there. I love the relationship he's already got going with Brock Purdy. I talked about him plenty on Monday's show. You can go back to the Football Guys episode. It's really fun to say, by the way, Football Guys. So go and check that one out. Dave, we're on to round 6 now.
What I want to say is there is, like, in other platforms, some of these guys might fall into the later rounds, but like here on Drafters, where they've got a pretty sharp ADP, it feels like this is really like the fall off point after this round, because in round 5, you've got Jameson Williams, Calvin Ridley, Alvin Kamara, DeAndre Swift, Ricky Pearsall, Emeka Egbuka, Jalen Waddle. I could have picked all of those guys as my favorite picks in this round. Like, this round is just chock full of good players. But if any of these guys are falling into round 6 or 7, we're going to talk about our favorite picks in those rounds. But they're like 8 of the 12 guys that are in round 5. If they fall to round 6, those are actually my favorite picks in the next round.
Yeah, I think that you can see definitely big changes in ADP because, like, there are some platforms where I probably would have seen my 6th round pick be my 5th round pick, and Ricky Pearsall fall to the 6th, and then another guy, Emeka Egbuka from the 5th round, actually be my 7th round pick. Like, so
where did we get Pearsall on the ESPN show? I want to say round 9, right?
something like, I think it was round 8.
Around 8 or 9, but like whatever
it might
was,
have actually been 7. We probably have to go back and look at that episode. I think it was round 7, Ricky Pearsall, and then round 8, Emeka Egbuka is what we got there.
That sounds right.
Yeah. So seeing him round 5, like that's not that. All you have to do is like a player a little bit more than one other person in your league, and that's it. You take your chance on him. I've never heard someone say, man, I really regret drafting my guys. Everyone always says, I hate that I waited too long and someone sniped me on them. All right, let's go to round 6 here, Dave. This is going to be a fun one to talk about.
Looking in round 6, I forgot who I went with. I'm just kind of looking at the ADP.
It's only on the sheet.
Rashee Rice. Yeah,
it's
Rashee
only
Rice.
on the sheet.
Yes. I'm sorry. I was looking at the ADP list, not the guys that I picked out. I think I've already strayed away from the guys that I said I'd talk about. But Rashee Rice, we talked about it briefly in the cold open. So if you want like a much more nuanced and deeper discussion on Rashee Rice and you're watching this on YouTube, head over to Apple's podcast or Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, and you'll get like a 7-minute rant on Rashee Rice. But this to me is just an amazing opportunity to get a wide receiver 1, and not just like a wide receiver 1, a guy with like top 3 upside and like a top 10 floor. That's what we've seen from Rashee Rice since the second half of his rookie season. And now he's falling because of the suspension. And there was some concern that he was going to get suspended for 10 games, that his hearing wasn't going to come until the middle of the season, that his suspension could bleed into the fantasy playoffs. Well, he accepted what the NFL offered, took a 6-game suspension that will start in week 1. And to me, that just makes him such an easy pick. Like when I was doing my rankings yesterday, I said I'd be okay taking him as early as like the back end of round 4. Paying attention to some of these NFC drafts, the high stakes ones that he's been getting drafted in. He's going in early round 5 in some of these. So I think that's where he kind of deserves to be, is like that 4-5 turn. But I've seen him falling into round 5, round 6, round 7 on other platforms. And I think that there's this confusion that like, because Rashee Rice is suspended, you're taking a 0 for the first 6 weeks. And there's no like easy way to explain this. I'm writing an article on it right now that'll go much deeper into it, but you're not taking a 0 for those 6 weeks. You're putting somebody else in that wide receiver slot. And even if you're just getting like 8 points per game or 10 points per game, whatever it is, you add that to the projected total for Rashee Rice over the last 10 games of the season. And you'll see that Rashee Rice plus a replacement level player for the first 6 weeks is going to project better than almost every other wide receiver going in this range. So when I tweeted this yesterday about like wanting to take Rashee Rice earlier, I was inundated with replies saying like, well, Rashee Rice isn't going to help me when my team goes 0-6. I don't think you're going 0-6 just because you spent a 5th or 6th round pick on Rashee Rice. You put in, you're going to laugh at me for saying this, but is there a better pairing, Alfredo, than Rashee Rice and Olamide Zaccheaus? Because Zaccheaus is probably going to lose his role to Luther Burden, but he is going to be getting a lot of work early in the season. Or you look at a Christian Kirk that could potentially lose some work down the stretch to Jaden Higgins. You look at these boring veterans that are atop the depth chart right now, and you can put those in your lineups for the first 6 weeks to get by with 8, 10, 12 points per week. And then you get to plug a surefire wide receiver 1 in over the second half of the season and through the fantasy playoffs. Rashee Rice is a guy that I am going to try to have on every single team I'm drafting between now and kickoff.
Players are flavors. If you walk into the ice cream shop and say, I want chocolate ice cream, and they say, we don't have any chocolate, we're sold out, do you just go, okay, I'm not going to eat. I'm just going to be hungry? No, like you draft Rashee Rice, you can get another flavor of player. I promise you can put someone else in your lineup. You don't have to sit there and just take a 0 every single week, Dave. Exactly what you're saying there. We did a whole thing on it. Go to the audio side. You can get the whole breakdown of it. There's other players in this round I really like. Travis Hunter was another one that I considered here. Matthew Golden's got some serious upside. RJ Harvey's an interesting player, and I'm not quite there on him yet. My guy that I went with here in round 6 was Isiah Pacheco. And I went with Isiah Pacheco because we are 2 years removed from him being the running back 15, playing just 14 games in the year. This is still the Kansas City Chiefs offense with the Rashee Rice suspension. They're going to be relying on that run pretty heavily still. They don't really have a second punch in this backfield. They've had some issues with Kareem Hunt here in the preseason with staying healthy. They went and just re-signed Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which kind of tells you where they're at with their backfield. Rashard Smith had a few exciting moments, but not quite ready to take that leap. Like, this is Isiah Pacheco's backfield. So once again, I asked that question. Can this player be top 12 at their position? And I'm getting him here in the 6th round as my RB2. Absolutely I love that here in round 6. Dave.
And you know what's weird too is like he's been an ADP faller in like all of the drafts I've done over the last weekend. Isiah Pacheco is falling like below his ADP. Like I keep looking for Isiah Pacheco news. I'm like, do you like break a leg or something? Like, why is this guy falling into round 7 and 8 of drafts? I do not understand it.
I think there's just a lot of like distraction. There's the illusions that like, oh, Xavier Worthy's going to break out. Travis Kelce's slimmed down. This is going to be a heavy passing offense. Rashard Smith is going to take over the Jerick McKinnon, Kareem Hunt role. Like there's a lot of that just going around. But Isiah Pacheco just remains really easy pick for me there in round 6. Let's go to round 7. Dave, kick us off.
I'm going to go with similar to Rashee Rice. You know, this is like your arbitrage option if you miss out on Rashee Rice. Jordan Addison is going later than Rashee Rice, has a shorter suspension, but the same game theory applies that you can take Jordan Addison, a guy who has immense weekly upside. Like we have seen this guy can score on big touchdowns. What we saw in the little taste of preseason action with Jordan Addison and JJ McCarthy is that JJ McCarthy is willing to throw the ball to him often, even if he is covered and deep downfield. Like it seems like there is some good chemistry brewing between those two. And just like Rashee Rice, you're not taking a 0 while he's suspended. You just put another player in for those first few weeks. And Jordan Addison, if he weren't suspended, would probably be getting drafted in round 4 or round 5. That same kind of cluster we talked about with like Emeka Egbuka and Ricky Pearsall and Jameson Williams and these really high ceiling young wide receivers. But the suspension is pushing him down draft boards and pushing him down farther than he should be. So just like Rashee Rice, if I don't get him, I will happily take Jordan Addison. Now, I don't want both on the same team because then I feel like I'm playing with fire a little bit too much. But I want to try to get Rashee Rice or Jordan Addison on as many teams as I can.
I think this is your only pick where I go, probably not. But it's not a bad pick. I'm gonna go.
And it's the weekly upside. I mean, you know the highs and lows with Jordan Addison. Like he's going to have some weeks where he doesn't do much at all, and then he's going to have weeks where he gives you 30 points.
Yeah, and round 7 too. When we're looking at this, like, the board kind of gets a little dry and a little weird. Oh, yeah. Like this is when you have to start considering changes of positions, tight ends, quarterbacks, stuff like that. I went with a guy who. It's been such a roller coaster of a preseason with him, but Kaleb Johnson. And I think it leans right back into the upside theory of what you're drafting for when you're looking for players at this point. And I remember a lot of people seeing the clips of Kaleb Johnson getting the ball. It goes right off his chest and he starts running without it, not realizing, that he didn't catch the ball. And that could very well be an issue. But Jaylen Warren also has some issues right now where he's been fumbling, and that's been something that's plagued his career. Kaleb Johnson was drafted to be the guy that can lead the backfield for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I can see this being something where we're talking week 5, week 6, week 7, where Kaleb Johnson really takes over this backfield and has a heavy workload. If there's one thing that coaches hate more than dropped passes, it's fumbling the football, just turning the ball over completely. And that's something that could potentially get Jaylen Warren benched here. So Kaleb Johnson being the guy that becomes let's call him top 24 running back in the back half of the season, that's really valuable to me here. And I'd like to grab that in round 7.
Yeah, I wasn't a biggest fan of the prospect, and I kind of like bought into some of the like, oh, if he gets plopped into Najee Harris's role, but I don't know, maybe I'm overreacting to the camp news, but when I see that like his biggest issue, but when I see that the biggest issue is pass blocking, that does worry me a little bit when they've got a frail 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers behind center with a surgically repaired Achilles, and then that's what Kenneth Gainwell does really well, and that's what Jaylen Warren does really well. So I agree that like the game theory play that he's a rookie that could come on strong late down the stretch. I think that it makes him worth the cost. And this is another guy that he was going round 4 and round 5 earlier, like right after the NFL draft. I think he's fallen now where a lot of that risk is baked into his ADP. But I think, the upside is really high, but this is also a guy that, come bye weeks, you might just be saying, I got to get this guy off my roster. I think he can go either way, immense upside and really low downside.
And that's where I'm at this draft here. Like you're not losing your fantasy football league based on your 7th round picks. So exactly. That's where I'm at with him. And my kind of saving grace was like players can get better at pass blocking. That is in my opinion, from like what I've scouted, like that is an effort trait there is how much effort are you going to put into pass blocking? All right, let's go to round 8 here, Dave, because I think this is where things start to get really fun. Give me your pick here.
Tyrone Tracy. there is such a dissonance between like what's actually happening in New York and what fantasy managers think is happening. Camp Scadaboo is behind Devin Singletary on the depth chart. Like, some of the concerns we had about not being quite as big on an NFL field as he was in college and the breakaway runs in college that wouldn't be breakaway runs in the NFL, that is rearing its head now in training camp. And, he got a little taste of action with the ones in training camp and then injured himself. And while he was injured, Devin Singletary was able to carve out a role. But all signs are pointing to Tyrone Tracy being the guy again, like he was last year. And it took him a few weeks to kind of get up to speed. But once we saw Tyrone Tracy out there, he was checking all the boxes for efficiency. I mean, he was ripping off big plays. He was pulling targets. He was a very efficient player. And it sounds like they want to lean on him again this year. So there's this weird discount on Tyrone Tracy right now because a lot of people are holding on to their pre-draft priors regarding Cam Scadaboo. But the reality is Tyrone Tracy is going to get a huge workload here. There's going to be a little bit left over for Devin Singletary and Cam Scadaboo. But the Giants have just consistently all offseason said that Tyrone Tracy is going to be the RB1 again.
Yeah, I think this is a great pick. And honestly, I probably could have justified taking him around earlier in round 7 and trying to steal him from you because he would have ended up in this build that I have here as my RB3. I would have been very happy with that. For yours, this build, let's call it that, right? I know this isn't exactly how you would draft, but in this case, he's your RB2. And that's something I know that you would feel very comfortable with in a fantasy roster.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the way I draft, I've got him as my RB1 on a lot of teams.
Okay. In round 8 here, I went with Tyler Warren. This is, to me, one of the biggest upside picks you can take at tight end, and this is where I want to start taking those, right? And if I'm not getting a Trey McBride or a Brock Bowers falling to round 3 or a George Kittle falling to round 4, then I'm just going to wait until later and later in my drafts. I don't want Travis Kelce, especially with the Rashee Rice news. I'm not interested in Mark Andrews, and there's a couple other guys, TJ Hawkinson, Sam Laporta. I'm skipping over that little tier of players, and I'm going for Tyler Warren, who is one of my football guys. He's my tight end 7 rankings, and to get him here round 8, the upside that he's got for target volume, for run after catch, for even just being the goal line back in Indy, which is kind of crazy. I love this, man. I love this. We're starting to see rookie tight ends are taking a bigger role in the NFL because they're not being asked to block nearly as often. They're just asked to be weapons, and that's what Tyler Warren is.
Some honorable mentions in this one as well. Justin Fields, huge upside as a starter. Is he going to be starting week 17? We don't know, but when he's out there, he'll be scored a lot of points. Zach Charbonnet, J.K. Dobbins. I feel like this is like a nice little pocket where there are a lot of really good running backs here. So especially if I'm doing like a hero running back build where I start off with, one of the guys that we talked about earlier, and then I load up on wide receivers and get a quarterback and a tight end. These rounds right here are where I really want to just like hammer running backs, because the next few rounds, it feels like there are just so many running backs, some that project okay, some that are more contingent upside plays. But I feel like these next like 3 or 4 rounds just have a ton of running back value.
Well, let's go to the next round then. Let's go to round 9 here in our blueprint for the perfect fantasy football draft. Dave, where are you going?
I know I just said there's a lot of running back value here, but I'm going to talk about a wide receiver that I like here. I think the running backs are kind of obvious. They stand out. You know what they're getting there. I want to talk about Christian Kirk because I'm looking right here on ADP. I see Jaden Higgins is projected ahead of Christian Kirk. And I don't want to overreact to camp news and depth charts and things like that, but Xavier Hutchinson is ahead on the depth chart right now, ahead of Jaden Higgins. Jaden Higgins is a great athlete. He is a size speed guy. But it sounds like, he's struggling to get up to speed a little bit, which isn't uncommon for a round 2 wide receiver. And we also have this like idea after the NFL draft, like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed about every player. Every player is going to be great. Every player is going to hit the high-end range of outcomes. And then the reality of training camp and preseason and the regular season comes to play. And, I don't think that Xavier Hutchinson is going to hold down the wide receiver 3 spot all year. But I do think that Christian Kirk is going to hold down the wide receiver 2 spot all year. Just such an underrated player. We've made the joke a few times throughout the offseason, but like the oldest 28-year-old receiver out there feels like he's been in the league for 2 decades. Like he's bounced around on a bunch of different teams, but still in the prime of his career, almost immediately locked in a spot on 2 wide receiver sets opposite Nico Collins. And we saw CJ Stroud in his rookie season there was a stretch where he was able to support Nico Collins and Tank Dell both as wide receiver ones. There's a lot of pass volume in this offense. So I'm obviously excited about Nico Collins, a great player. But if Christian Kirk is going to be a full-time player on this offense, lining up out wide in 2 wide receiver sets, moving over to the slot in 3 wide receiver sets on a team that's going to throw the ball a lot, Christian Kirk is one of those guys that is falling right now outside of the top 50 wide receivers. And it wouldn't shock me one bit if he ends up finishing the year inside the top 30.
Yeah, I mean, he's just he's kind of like the Tyler Lockett who just sticks around forever and ever, and people never really get too high or too low. He's just always hanging out there, and he can always be your wide receiver 3 or 4.
Perfect comp. Like, probably never going to have top 10 upside, but if you're looking for a guy that you could draft as a wide receiver 5 or 6, and you're going to get like wide receiver 2 or 3 production, that's what Christian Kirk does almost every year.
For me, this is where I sort of go on a run where, let me see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of my 8 picks are running backs with upside. And this is kind of where I want to do that. With this pick here, I go Travis Etienne in round 9, because at least in this build, he ends up being my running back 4. I'm not losing my league because of this pick, but I very well may win my league with a guy who was a top 5 fantasy running back just a couple of seasons ago. Liam Cohen comes in. He brings in this revamped run offense where it's truly an ambiguous backfield where people are saying, I don't know if it's Tank Bigsby. I don't know if it's Bechal Tootin. Well, Bechal Tootin, one, he's got the explosive run ability, but he's also very clearly third on this depth chart. Tank Bigsby, a lot of people are very excited about him because of what he can do in the run game, but he's almost a 0 in the pass game. Whereas Travis Etienne does give you the best of everything. We've seen him be able to do it. This is a guy that I do think can absolutely revamp his career in his final year of his contract here with the Jaguars, where Liam Cohen probably just wants to run him into the ground as best as he can and use him. Now, does that mean that he's going to stay healthy all year? Or that Bechal Tootin won't get touches, or that maybe LeQuint Allen doesn't hop on the field for a couple of passing downs? No, but that's what I'm going for here is upside. It's round 9. Can I get a guy that can finish top 12 or top 15, top 20 at his position? I love that here with Travis Etienne.
Yeah, and I think the concern, of course, is that this is going to be a 3-headed committee. But if you read what's coming out of Jacksonville camp, it sounds like it's very clearly like Tank Bigsby and Travis Etienne splitting the work, and then a little bit left over for Bechal Tootin. Sure, he could come on strong over the course of the year like Bucky Irving did last year. That's everybody's favorite Bechal Tootin comp, I know. But I think it's important to remind people that
players.
They are not.
They're not even close to being the same players, guys.
Right. And when I look, Rachaad White got injured last year, which I think really gets lost in the Bucky Irving breakout discussion. But when Rachaad White came back from that injury, he still averaged 4.1 targets per game over the rest of the season. So it's not like he was completely phased out of the offense. Like, he was still getting touches on the ground. He was still the primary pass catcher as well. And that, to me, is so similar to what Travis Etienne could do, that even if Tank Bigsby takes a lot of the early down work, or if Bechal Tootin comes in here and there, I don't think either of those guys have the pass catching chops that Travis Etienne does. So especially in half PPR and full PPR leagues, he still has that out, that even if Bechal Tootin does just be so good that the coaching staff can't possibly ignore him and he finds his way onto the field, I think Rachaad White is still going to be the primary pass catching back there, and that gives him some sort of floor.
All right, let's go to round 10, Dave. Who are you going with?
Colston Loveland. And I just realized I said Rachaad White instead of Travis Etienne, using them very interchangeably in that comparison there. But yeah, Colston Loveland. And this, obviously I'm a Bears fan, so I try to remove my bias here, but I also write the preseason Bears training camp reports, and they have just been gushing about this guy. Like, I can go on and on about how much Ben Johnson has just been like drooling about them living out of 12 personnel, and that Colston Loveland gives them the versatility to stay on the field in the same package and throw different looks at the defense. But he is already out here like beating some of the league's best defensive backs in one-on-ones. He's got the speed where he can just rip away from middle linebackers. Jaquan Brisker, I think most people would say, is a very good safety, a very athletic safety, a guy who can play in coverage, a guy who's very physical. They said that there was one day where they were doing one-on-ones, Colston Loveland against Jaquan Brisker, and Colston Loveland was winning every single vertical rep. Like, that to me is shocking, that we're looking at this guy with 6'6", like just a huge guy that is beating one of the league's better safeties in one-on-one reps. Then we've also seen him catching balls across the middle of the field in the preseason games and in training camps. We saw Sam Laporta in this role as a rookie under Ben Johnson finish as the tight end 1 that year. I know this is going to sound crazy to a lot of people, but I think that is well within Colston Loveland's range of outcomes. And obviously, the tight end landscape is a little bit different now with Brock Bowers and Trey McBride and George Kittle still being George Kittle. But it wouldn't surprise me one bit if going into next year, we're looking at Colston Loveland in that same tier with those other guys as just an elite can't miss tight end.
I need the Bears to be good for you this year. Like I need it.
I mean, I think they're going to be. They're going to be a 5-win team, maybe 7 wins if things break right. But I think for fantasy purposes, because they're going to be losing, they're going to be forced to throw the ball a lot. And I think that this is one where, I'm lower on DJ Moore, I'm lower on Romeo Doubs, I'm lower on Luther Burden, but I think that there's still some value to be had in this pass catching game. And Colston Loveland is the one that really stands out to me.
All right, round 10, the guy I'm going with here, I'm taking the first quarterback, Drake Maye. Drake Maye, who was one of my football guys, and it's just, guys, he's going as quarterback 16, 17, 15 in a lot of drafts. And last year we saw in the games that he started, he was quarterback 14 on a points per game basis. We know what the floor is in an absolutely awful team. Like I keep repeating the same thing over and over. We see the immense rushing upside with him. We know that's the big differentiator between quarterbacks. I'm getting this as my 10th pick in a fantasy draft. And yes, he is falling here. There are not enough people that are getting excited about Drake Maye and taking him earlier. And that's because the quarterback player pool is pretty deep. There are I almost went with Jordan Love 2 rounds later because he still also has top 12 upside. But what I really want is a guy that can just flip the league on its head and change everything for me as a fantasy manager and get me that top 3 upside the way that Jaden Daniels did last year. And Drake Maye, for me, is that guy this year because of the rushing upside.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Drake Maye. I'm kind of there with ADP on Drake Maye. I struggle to move him up too high in my rankings, but a guy that I'm regularly drafting, and this is just like that whole pocket of year 2 quarterbacks with rushing upside. They all kind of go in this range. So Kaleb Williams, Drake Maye, JJ McCarthy. I like all of those guys on my team.
All right, Dave, let's speed through these. We've got 7 rounds left, 14 players. We're going to be really quick, okay? Roughly 30 seconds per player. Round 11, who are you going with?
Truth be told, I hate this round. I don't like any of these guys here. And this is usually the point in the draft where I just stop adhering to ADP and I'll just reach rounds ahead to get the guys that I actually want on my team. But Quinshon Judkins does stand out to me. Again, like anybody watching the show, shocker, I am not averse to drafting players who are suspended or might not play. And it's just like pure upside here. Like if Quinshon Judkins doesn't play this year, big whoop. I'll cut him from my team and I'll find somebody else to pick up. But if he does play, this is a guy who is drafted to handle 20 to 25 touches per game in this Cleveland backfield. I don't see any other running back in this range that has that sort of upside without requiring an injury ahead of them. He doesn't need an injury. He doesn't need things to break in his direction. He just needs to sign a piece of paper and he's going to be a top 24 running back.
You and I both did the same thing here where we didn't like what was available in the round 11 ADP and we just reached to the next round. Yeah. And I did that for all the upcoming rounds here where I was just like, ADP is kind of stupid at this point. Go and get your guys. And I started going 2 and 3 rounds ahead. I went with Ray Davis. Just the upside there as a handcuff running back in Buffalo is insane. If should anything happen to James Cook, Ray Davis has immediate top 15 upside as a running back on a weekly basis. Let's go to round 12.
152 yards in his one start last year. Like they will lean on him if James Cook has to miss any time.
Yes. Let's go to round 12, Dave. Where'd you go here?
Demario
Douglas.
Davis.
You
did I write that or did you write that?
You definitely.
I was like, who the heck is Demario Davis? Yeah,
That's
Demario
a linebacker.
Douglas.
Good IDP pick right here.
Yeah,
from
Demario
like 3 years
Douglas,
ago.
Just a really strong camp out of New England. This is a guy last year, he saw 5 times as many snaps out of the slot as any other wide receiver on the Patriots. Sounds like he has locked down that role this year. And looking at a Josh McDaniels offense, I expect that slot role to be even more valuable. Drake Maye has gushed about him, saying that he is just completely unguardable. There have been good talk about his hands last year, which weren't great. He had a handful of drops here, but that he's catching the ball better than he was last year. He's going to be second fiddle to Stephon Diggs, but Stephon Diggs, 31 years old, coming off an ACL tear, might not be as good as we had hoped for. So there's also an out here where if Stephon Diggs does fall by the wayside, that Demario Douglas. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be making this mistake all year now because of this. Demario Douglas could be the wide receiver 1 in New England.
I went with Rachaad White here for a lot of the same reasons that I've gone with Travis Etienne and Ray Davis and many of the other running backs I'm going to talk about here is just the contingent upside. There's already a passing down role for him on a team that needs pass catchers. The Bucks don't have Jalen McMillan. They're not going to have Chris Godwin for a little while. And we see all the positive effects that this has for Emeka Egbuka and his ADP, but everyone else has sort of stayed the same. Bucky Irving is where he is. Mike Evans is where he is. Rachaad White almost feels like he's been dropping week after week because of all the Bucky Irving hype. And Dave, you mentioned before.
I got him in round 18 over the weekend. Like round 18, Rachaad White, what are we doing?
The rumors of his death have been greatly exaggerated. Like this is just crazy that I'm able to get him right now in this build as my running back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's my RB6 on this team, who's going to, I think, on a weekly basis, give you RB3 production with RB2 upside. If anything should happen, he's RB1 upside if Bucky Irving can't play. So, yeah, this is a slam dunk pick for me in round 12.
He was an RB5 2 years ago. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, he was a top 24 running back last year where he missed games and Bucky Irving was good. I don't get it. Let's go to round 13, Dave. Who are you going with here?
This is the most like vanilla boring pick imaginable, but sometimes those vanilla boring picks just get overcorrected and pushed way too far down draft boards. Romeo Doubs. And I know like it's not a sexy name by any means. I'm sure people in the YouTube comments are going to be talking to me about his yards per route run and all of his advanced analytics, which I know they're bad, but I just expect the Packers to be a much better offense as a whole this year. I really like the moves that they made this offseason. Sounds like Jordan Love was having a great camp before that thumb injury, which non-throwing hand, so I'm not overly concerned about that. And I think the thesis with Romeo Doubs isn't that you're drafting him and plugging him in your lineup every single week and getting, 150 targets, but it's that it's going to be a good offense. And he is a different archetype than all of the other receivers there. He's a guy that they like using near the red zone. He's a guy that they like to use to move the chains on third down. So I think that there's an out here similar to what we saw last year with Rashad Bateman, where he could just score a bunch of touchdowns and end up smashing his ADP because he is one of the few guys that is different than all of the other receivers there. So if we're looking at Jordan Love, who we expect to have a good season, throwing for 30, 40 touchdowns, perhaps, if a dozen of those go Romeo Doubs' way, he could smash his ADP. I'm not going to try to talk about any of the metrics because I know his metrics aren't great, but he is a trusted player who is the only wide receiver in that room that can play the X role. And now we've got the word about Jaden Reed dealing with this foot injury as well. That's a big chunk of the pie that could end up going missing, having to go somewhere. So Romeo Doubs, not a sexy name, a pretty boring player, if I'm being honest, but I think there's upside here that isn't really being accounted for.
Round 13, I'm going with Ollie Gordon II, running back for the Miami Dolphins. This is just a high upside pick. Major contingent upside should Davante Adams not be able to play. We know he's already been dealing with a calf injury. Those kind of soft tissue injuries can rear their head again. Davante Adams has not been impervious to injury throughout his career, and Jalen Wright really has not taken that step. Ollie Gordon's become the RB2 on this team. Remember guys, we are also just 1 year removed, or two, however you want to count it, 1-2 years removed from Raheem Mostert having a ridiculous 21 touchdown season. I'm not suggesting Ollie Gordon goes out and has 20 plus touchdowns this year, but I'm saying that is available in an offense like the Miami Dolphins offense, especially where you have a guy who's going to be the goal line and short yardage back. We've seen that he can do things out in the passing game. Ollie Gordon to me is the ultimate upside pick here in round 13. I want to take him earlier if I can. I'm taking him round 12, 11. I've taken him as high as round 10 with the way that some drafts have shaped up. And it's just, to me, I never regret taking him as my pick there.
Yeah, huge riser for me over the last couple of weeks.
Round 14. Here we go. We go wide receivers here, Dave. Who are you taking?
I'm going with Tory Horton, a guy that I've talked about a lot. A day 3 wide receiver rookie is not typically a good bet to make. But when I look for the day 3 wide receivers that can hit, there's two things that I'm looking for: character concerns and medical issues. And that's not normally something that I'm searching for when I'm wanting to draft players, but it does add some context as to why these guys fell to day 3. I thought Tory Horton was good enough that if he had a clean bill of health, he could have been a round 2, maybe even a round 3 pick, but that knee injury scared some people off. He fell deep into day 3, but I think he is such a good wide receiver. We're looking at like a 99th percentile athlete, immediately beat out Marquez Valdes-Scantling like the first week of camp. They were confident enough in Tory Horton that they were able to just flat out release MVS from the roster a couple days ago. This is a guy who is going to be on the field on 3 wide receiver sets. And truth be told, Clint Kubiak doesn't run a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. We're going to see a lot of packages with fullbacks and tight ends out there. But the only thing right now that's keeping Tory Horton from being on the field full time is Cooper Kupp. And I got to be honest, I'm not really scared off by Cooper Kupp all that much. Like Sean McVay just let him go for nothing. It seems like the end of his career is, if not already here, very, very close. And I think Tory Horton's just such a good player that could end up being a much bigger part of the offense than people anticipate.
I'm going with Jalen Coker here. I'm doing the rarely seen, but you know what? Pretty fun to do. Wide receiver handcuff special here with Tetairoa McMillan and Jalen Coker. Coker was getting double-digit fantasy points over the back half of the season. Like I'm looking at it right now, Dave. He was ahead of guys like Jalen Waddle. He was ahead of Deebo Samuel. He was ahead of Chris Olave. He was ahead of Romeo Doubs, Ricky Pearsall, Jaden Reed. A bunch of guys that we are all taking well ahead of him in drafts. And now with the news of Adam Thielen getting traded, I love being able to take Jalen Coker here in round 14 of my fantasy draft because once again, it's first you buy your house or your car. The next thing you do is you buy your insurance. And that's what I'm doing here with my wide receiver. If anything were to happen to Tetairoa McMillan, Jalen Coker becomes an instant fantasy target there. I love having him in round 14. Let's go to round 15.
Real quickly. Yeah. I see Coker is starting to go ahead of Xavier Legette in a lot of drafts. Do you think that's right?
Yes.
Oh, all right. I can't get there.
I'm doing that. I'm not a Legette guy. I'm not a Legette guy. I think we'll keep it quick, but he's got a lot of the same Laviska Shenault, Quinton Johnston, Treylon Burks things where very good athlete, kind of still don't know what he is. And I mean, Xavier Legette, yeah, he's going to be playing a little bit more on the outside as their Z here, but Jalen Coker, I think he's the one that makes Bryce Young feel pretty comfortable in that slot position. All right, let's go to round 15. And this is where we go running backs in back-to-back rounds here, Dave.
Yeah, Blake Corum. I don't understand why he isn't going like 6 rounds earlier. When I look at where Ray Davis... He should be where
Ray Davis and all those guys are.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. Ray Davis, Will Shipley, Tyler Algier, Zach Charbonnet. Like, we know all of the elite handcuffs. Blake Corum is an elite handcuff. Like, if something were to happen and Kyren Williams had to miss any time, they are plugging Blake Corum in to get the same 30 inefficient touches every single week and 2 touchdowns a game that Kyren Williams gets. I don't understand this one at all. I mean, I was a big fan of Corum coming in. He was a little bit older for a prospect, but, you know, good size, good speed, good power. I think that he is just such a good fit for this offense. And it's just like, this to me is just, it's a no-brainer. Like, I have Blake Corum on almost every team that I've drafted this year. I don't understand why he isn't going in round 12.
Yeah, I made sure you got that pick here for this. Like, I did not want to take him because I know you needed him. Round 15, I'm going with Chris Rodriguez, which maybe doesn't have the same upside as a Blake Corum, but we really don't know who the starting running back is here in the Washington Commanders offense. And if any one of these guys gets hurt, we're looking at a very simple 1-2 punch there in the Commanders offense, but also just the touchdown upside for Rodriguez. He's the cheapest of the 3. And it was something we've talked about. I love taking advantage of ambiguous running back situations where we don't really know who it is. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt's going like, Dave, I want to say like 7 rounds ahead. Like, he's
7-8 is where I see him going. Yeah.
Yeah. He's going 7 or 8 rounds ahead of Chris Rodriguez in round 7 or 8. And then like Austin Eckler is going a round or 2 after that. Chris Rodriguez going this late. He's been a guy that's been averaging over 6 yards per carry in his career. Dan Quinn's already suggested he's going to be the goal line guy. Their offense is a little bit more unconventional. He's had himself a good preseason. So I kind of look at this and I say, okay, Austin Eckler's a little bit older. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt's not the biggest guy in the world. Chris Rodriguez, I think, still gives you some upside.
I like Eckler too at cost. Like, if we're going to talk about the Commanders' backfield real quick, he was playing like 60% of the snaps last year and like getting almost 100% of the backfield targets. Like, yeah, I'll take darts on all of these guys, but Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, a little bit too rich for me. I'd rather pass on him and take Eckler or Chris Rodriguez way later.
Let me see where he's going. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is going. I mean, it's not a bad cost. He's going round 10. That doesn't lose you your league. Like that to me is, I'm
he's there around 10, I'll take him. I feel like I often see him going a little bit earlier. And I think
ADP is catching up. I think he's probably going like round 8.
Round 7 or 8 is typically where I see him going. And, but again, like, we did that mock draft the other day where we got him in like round 15 or something like that. So if you're in a league where like some of your league mates are just snoozing and you can get him in round 10, 11, 12, I think it's worth the risk, but definitely not paying up for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt in round 7 or 8.
Final 2 rounds here. We're in round 16. Dave, where are you going?
I mean, similar play to last round where I went with Blake Corum, and this one I'm going with Kendre Miller. This is another guy. I mean, I think the difference here is that like the Rams offense is good. and we like handcuffs on good offenses, the Saints offense probably isn't good. And I don't know how much value there would be even if Alvin Kamara goes down. But at the end of the day, this is a very talented running back, like one of my favorite prospects coming into the league. Like as soon as I put on his tape, watching him at TCU, I was like, I just love this guy, and haven't really seen much through the first couple of years. I don't know if he, made a passing glance at Dennis Allen's wife or what happened, but Dennis Allen just hated him. Like he would not put him on the field, putting him on IR when he wasn't even injured. And now all we've heard from Kellen Moore is that Kendre Miller looks fantastic and that he's healthy and that he's still young and that he plays with this aggression that he likes in his running backs. He has said time and time again that Kendre Miller is the clear RB2 in this backfield. They let Cam Akers go. They let Clyde Edwards-Helaire go. There's very little projectable volume here for Kendre Miller, but he's just still a young and good player. And I think if the opportunity arises, he's good enough that he can still produce even in less than ideal circumstances.
I'll still keep a candle lit for Kendre Miller, man. He was such a fun prospect.
I always will.
Coming out of TCU.
He'll have like 1,200 career yards going into his age 29 season, and I'll be like, this could be the year, Kendre Miller. Like
he's the Uncle Rico of running backs, man. If coach would just put me in, I'd be able to run for 2,000 yards.
23 too. Like we forget how young he is. Like he's very much
been in the league for like 9
Allen
years. He started at age 16. It's crazy.
He's like Braylon Allen before Braylon Allen. Like he just came into the league so young, and like not like he's not playing it like at his age 24 season. Like he just turned 23 a couple of months ago. This dude is so young.
Round 16, you did the same thing as your round 15 pick, and then I went and did the same thing as my round 15 pick, where I took the cheapest of the ambiguous backfield here, where I went with Dameon Pierce in the Houston Texans backfield, because Woody Marks is going a full 2 rounds ahead of him, and then Nick Chubb is going like a full 4 or 5 rounds ahead of them, and I'm not buying in on the Nick Chubb thing. An older running back coming off a tough injury, doesn't really have the juice. Like that worries me. Woody Marks, I think, is fine. He wasn't a prospect that I was in love with. I think he benefited from being in a passing offense where he was getting targeted a lot. Dameon Pierce may not be exciting to a lot of people, but we're also not that far removed from him being the RB15 in points per game when he was a starter. And he's a guy that they have learned to trust as well in this offense, where like there's a world here where the Houston Texans defense remains really good, and the Texans are kind of realizing this offensive line stinks. We don't want to keep having CJ Stroud drop back a ton. We don't have to try to pass so much to win games. Let's just control clock with Dameon Pierce. And it may not be exciting. It may not be sexy, but you could probably get some volume out of one of these guys, depending on who it is. So if it's not going to be sexy, I'll just take the cheapest one out of all this. This is a Costco t-shirt. It's not sexy, but it's cheap and it's functional and it makes me happy.
Yeah, and I talked to a Houston beat reporter just a few days ago, because I've been saying it for the last few months. I'm like, there's no way that they are confident going into the season with this backfield that they have, because now we're getting reports like you and I have been on this for like a month. It's kind of weird how fantasy circles kind of knew what was happening with Joe Mixon before the national media kind of caught up. Now just like we're seeing Adam Schefter and Mike Florio and all the big national reporters are like, wow, Joe Mixon might not play this year. We've been saying that for the last 6 weeks. Yeah. But I asked a Houston beat reporter, I was like, there's no way they're not adding to this backfield, right? And he said they think that they can take like a quantity over quality approach, and that it's going to be a mix of Nick Chubb and Woody Marks and Dameon Pierce and Dare Ogunbowale and none.
I forgot
of
about
those
running back / kicker Dare Ogunbowale.
Yeah, and I don't think like there's anybody that is really like uber talented in that bunch. I mean, Nick Chubb, of course, but after what his knee has been through, this isn't the same
4
Nick
years
Chubb.
ago, yeah.
Right. So I think that like if one guy can emerge, why can't it be Dameon Pierce? Like we saw this guy. What was the game last year? Do you have it off the top of your head, Alfredo? I know he got that start in week 18 last year and had like 187 yards or something like that. And it's just like, wait, Dameon Pierce, yeah, this guy like was everybody's favorite rookie a couple of years ago. So I don't know if he could do that over a full season, but I think the upside is still there. Fun rookie season, and now it's just at the point where he's so cheap that like why not take the risk?
Last year, week 18 versus Tennessee, he was running back 6 in fantasy, 19 carries for 176 yards and a touchdown. He was averaging 9.2 yards per carry.
Yeah, and if I remember, he had a handful of targets as well. Like they leaned on him as a workhorse, and I mean, he looked just like the Dameon Pierce from his rookie season. So I don't have a lot of faith in Nick Chubb. Woody Marks is a fun player, but he's not a guy that's ever seen 20 touches per game. And then Dare Ogunbowale is Dare Ogunbowale.
Running back / kicker. All right, let's go to the last round here. Round 17. I know you have just been waiting to scream this name from the mountaintops.
I already dropped his name a half hour ago.
I know you did. And I wrote it for you in the show sheet so that you didn't even have to write it.
Yeah, Olamide Zaccheaus, like this is a real thing. And I don't want it to be a real thing, but it is a real thing. Like I've got a lot of guys who closely cover the Bears in Chicago, and I've been reaching out to them saying like, please tell me this isn't real. And they're like, no, it's real. And I said, but like at a certain point in time, like Luther Burden is going to take over Olamide Zaccheaus' role, right? And they're saying no. And I know it's crazy. This is a 28-year-old that has like never had a fantasy relevant season in his career. But we have seen that Ben Johnson's offense are predicated on getting the ball to the slot receiver. This is a former running back who can do big things after the catch. And it's not even so much that like he is this like world beating wide receiver. It's just that he is a very cerebral and smart football player. And they let him run choice routes where they just say, go out there, find the soft spot in the zone. He and Kaleb Williams have built a very strong connection in camp. And Adam Johns, who works for CHGO, said it a few days ago. He said over the last 2 weeks that Olamide Zaccheaus has been the number one target earner throughout training camp. So I don't think Olamide Zaccheaus is going to be a top 5 wide receiver. I'm not saying that he's the second coming of Amon-Ra St. Brown by any means, but it sounds like DJ Moore is not going to get the piece of the pie that people expect. Roma Dunze is not going to get the piece of the pie that people expect. Olamide Zaccheaus is going to get a much bigger piece than people realize. And I think there could be top 30 upside with his role in this offense.
Is that where I want to make a bet then? Let's do it. Where do you want to put the line? Do you want to put it at top 30?
I mean, here's what I will say. Week 1 lines came out. Olamide Zaccheaus' line is the same as Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt's.
Well, they play different positions. What does this mean? Their line?
Like, well, rushing and receiving. Like, they're saying that Olamide Zaccheaus is going to have just as many receiving yards as Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt is going to have rushing yards.
Okay, well,
that's noteworthy. Like Vegas is in on this. Like,
sure, let's do it. Let's do it. Where do you think he's a top 30 fantasy wide receiver by the end of the year?
What's his ADP? I want to say like a wide receiver, I don't know, man, 85 or something like that.
Sure. Do you think he's a top? You think he's a top 36?
I mean, I think it's a long shot. This is a similar bet to what I made on Allen Lazard a couple of years ago, where everybody just said, Allen Lazard sucks. This guy's never done anything throughout his career. But like they were gushing about Allen Lazard in training camp that year. And he went out and had 50 yards or a touchdown in his first 7 games before getting injured that year. I think one of the biggest edges you can get in fantasy football, like everybody knows the analytics now. There's some really good film grinders out there. I think one of the edges that can still be had is paying close attention to training camp reports. And every Bears training camp report is just gushing about OZ. So maybe this is just like, the first few weeks and he kind of warms the spot up and then they put Luther Burden in there. But I think that he is so cheap right now that you can get him for free in the last round of your draft. And at worst, you're getting a guy that can get you through injuries and bye weeks in the early part of the season. At best, you're getting a guy who could be a top 36 wide receiver that you got for free.
So what are we betting on this?
I mean, what odds are you giving me? Like, this guy is ADP. Like, I'm going out on a limb here. Like, if you want to juice the odds, I'll take something.
We'll put a line here at, I'll even drop it a little bit more. Let's put it at wide receiver, let's say 47.5. So let's say he's got to, or 48.5. Let's say he's got to be a top 48 wide receiver in fantasy.
I mean, I believe that is higher than where I even have him ranked. This is a long shot.
You just said he would be top 36.
I said it's possible that he can be top 36. I mean, it's also possible that he's nothing and he can be dropped from your waiver wire, but there has been so much buzz here. I'll tell you where I've got him ranked.
Oh yeah, where do you have him ranked? Let's see that. Let's just do that one.
I have him wide receiver 61, which is 62 spots ahead of his ADP. There's only one person in the industry that is up there with me, and it's Andy Behrens, another Bears fan who has been paying close attention to the Bears beat. Okay,
so let's say this, wide receiver 60. If he's wide receiver 60 or better, you win the bet.
All right, and the loser has to record a show this offseason with no shirt on. How about that?
Well, that's probably not a good idea, but I think we can. Want to do here? You know what? Let us know in the comments. Either in your Apple Podcast review or in the comments down below here on YouTube. Let us know what the loser has to do. Olamide Zaccheaus, wide receiver 60 or better, Dave wins. This is on the year, right? Not in points per game?
On the year, yeah.
On the year.
Well, points per game, of course, because he blows his ACL out week 1. Like, that's just a bad beat.
Okay, so in points per game then.
wide receivers 60 in points per game or better. And yeah, I mean, I'm looking right now, his
we'll pick a fun
consensus ranking is wide receiver 123 in ECR.
All right. Well, we're doing it. By the way, my last pick here, Jack Bech. If Jacoby Myers gets traded, Jack Bech is an easy 1-for-1 swap in there. Just some great volume. He's one of those prospects that I really, really loved coming out of TCU. It was he's a scrappy gym rat. You know, there's a lot of Ricky Pearsall to his game. You know, he can do a lot of those same things. But Dave, we went
Cooper
through.
Kupp,
yeah,
a little bit of Danny Amendola.
Yep.
Some Wes Welker, maybe. A little Julian Edelman.
Hunter Renfrow. A lot of it. It's there. All right. That seems like a good spot to end the show here. We gave you guys our favorite picks in each round of fantasy drafts according to Drafters ADP here. As always, I want to thank everybody for watching or listening all the way through. Remember, we got the Football Guys Listener League, so make sure you leave a review. Send that screenshot over to fantasyshow@footballguys.com, and you'll be entered to join the Listener League. As always, thanks everybody for watching and listening all the way through. For myself, for Dave, we'll see you next time. Adios.